Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me today. In this video I'm going to show you how I did these amazing resin bases. Really simple method. It takes a couple hours to do a whole bunch of these and it's well worth your time. Here we go. As for materials that we're going to be using today then, I'm going to start off with a matte black undercoat. I like using War Paints Fanatic. Then I'm going to do a dry brush of Green Stuff World's Ivory Tusk, followed by a watered down wash of Rhinox Hide. Then I'm going to get it a bit darker with two shades. First off, I'm going to start with Reichland Flesh. Then I'm going to hit it with some Angrax Earthshade, and then I'm going to start with some pigments. Two pigments I'm going to be using are Villaggio Pigment FX, and we've got Yellow Walker followed by Burnt Sienna, and we're going to fix it with some pigment fixer. And we're going to be dropping that in with this pipette. Let's go. What I'm doing now then is I'm going to start to undercoat these. Before you undercoat, just make sure that you have washed these with warm soapy water as per any resin base. So I'm applying our undercoat. This is just watered down matte acrylic black, and we're just making sure we get some good coverage, ensuring that we don't have any grey areas left over this base. What I like to do then is I like to get a hairdryer. Here I've nicked the wife's Dyson hairdryer. Brilliant little tool, handy to dry things really quickly. Now then, the next step is that I'm going to start to dry brush, and I'm going to be dry brushing from the edges, and I'm going to be using a bit of that ivory tusk. As I'm doing this, you can see that I'm rotating the handle in my hand and I'm approaching at different angles. It's a good idea to take this quite reserve at the beginning and just apply a little bit more, a couple of layers of it to get the added effect. You don't want to go overboard or you'll be having to darken this up again. Where I've got the highlight to where I want it, I'll start moving into the darkening of this base. And what I'm doing now then is I'm using a bit of Rhinox Hide watered down, so it's very loose and it's easily movable, and I'm just spreading this across the whole model, even those dry brushed areas. This will give us a good solid foundation to build up colours from. Here then we have an example of it fully dried, and you can see it's made it substantially darker. Now there's no shade applied at this stage. This is very much just the Rhinox watered down, and you can see the difference between the comparisons I'm holding up. It gives it a dark, rich colour. Next then, I'm going to take my ivory tusk and I'm going to start getting the extreme highlights on this one. So I'm just going back in exactly the same method as we did before, but I'm just being a bit more specific with exactly which pieces I want to highlight. What I'm going to move on now is to the Reichland Flesh shade. So I'm going to add this wash in, and I'm going to target the lower parts of the model just to start creating some interesting shadow and some details. This will really start to bring in the colours now. As you can see, I'm targeting specific parts of the model now. I'm not just washing the whole lot. And also what you're going to see me do now then is what I call capillary action, where I look for the cracks in the tile, for instance. I'm just going to wet it and then I'm going to drop some colour in it, and it's going to make it run in between those cracks. It's going to keep the lovely brightness of that tile without tainting it. Now you can see what all 5 of these bases look like. We're going to move on to the extreme highlight now with a bit of our White Scars by Citadel. So I'm just testing out how much I've got on my dry brush, just making sure that we don't ruin these bases at this stage. And once again, we're going to target the very edges. We're being a bit more systematic and specific on where we're going to get these highlights placed. Aiming for the very edges, and we're just going to build it up to the strength we need. We don't want to go overboard with this though. If we do accidentally do it, we can apply more washes and we can go back around the houses trying to get it to where we need it to be. But it's not ideal. You might as well take your time at this stage and not to ruin the good work you've done so far. Now that we're happy with the extreme highlight of the bright white, we're going to go back and we're going to start to add in the darkest colour, which is the Angrax Earth shade. Again, we're going to specifically target the crevices here. We're looking to create shadow with this one. This is the darkest colour we're going to be using, so use it sparingly, don't go over the top with it. And as you see, I'm being very, very careful with the placement of this one. From here we're going to start to apply our weathering powder. So as you can see, I'm using a box and I've got my 2 weathering powders inside the actual box. I'm going to use an old brush with spread bristles and I'm just going to dip it in the powder, scoop some up and gently lay it where I need it to be. At this stage I'm not going to go overboard with it. I'm not going to cover the whole base in powder. I'm just going to be specific, try and keep it balanced, try and keep small piles of this weathering powder on both sides of the base. We can always go back and do this a couple of times rather than going crazy on the first round. So as you can see then, this is the first layer of the weathering powder. I've placed it exactly where I want it to be, and I have dabbed it around to give it a thin dusting kind of effect. You can just pile it up and start to create actual texture with it, but now we need to seal it so it doesn't start spreading around. So what I'll do is I'll get my pipette, I've filled it up with our rubbing alcohol, and now I'm just going to apply drops of it very gently, being careful not to drag the nozzle of the pipette through the powder, and I'll allow that capillary action for the liquid to seep into the powder that's on the base. And when it dries, it will help keep it where it's supposed to be and stop it from smudging. Now you will have to go over this at the very end with some of the weathering powder setting agent, and that will finish off freezing it, fixing it in place. But for now, this rubbing alcohol is ideal for kind of layers between each colour of powder that I'm going to be using. So I've gone dark first, and then I'll apply the yellow ochre as the final finish to it. Now be careful when you're applying this then. If you put too much on, it will start to run. As you can see with some of mine, it started to run between the cracks and move the powder around. You might not always want this kind of effect, but in this case that's what I was aiming for. As you can see, these are dry now, and we're ready to start putting the yellow ochre on. So I'm going to apply that yellow ochre in exactly the same way. I'm going to be a bit more sparingly with how I spread this now. I don't want to cover up all of that brown that I've just put on. I just want little blotches of bright yellow, not too much. Just be a bit reserved with this. I tend to try and put it on several angles of the actual base. Don't just put it on one side because it will look slightly off. Once we're finished and we're happy with this, then we need to set this in exactly the same manner, but with the fixing agent, the AEK interactive stuff. As you can see then, this is all dried, it's been treated, it won't smudge anymore. we just need to finish this model off by completing the rims with the matte black. And there we have it, guys. 5 40mm bases all ready for your troops to be based upon. It looks absolutely lovely, doesn't it? And the good thing is, once you get a bit more proficient at doing this and you've got a bit more fluid and rehearsed, it takes no time at all to get these pumped out. But they look absolutely incredible. And I can't wait to get these on the tabletop, and I'm sure they'll start to turn some heads. Thanks for joining me today. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more.